Today's game takes us to Cuba in the late 1950s, or at least the original Japanese version does. In Japan, the game is known as Guevara, named after Che Guevara, a major figure of the Cuban Revolution. You've probably at least seen his face on a t-shirt somewhere. In Guevara, you play as Che, and a second player takes control of Fidel Castro, the late Cuban dictator. And if you're familiar with the US's anti-communist sentiments and its relationships with dictators, especially during the Cold War, you might now understand why the game was changed from Guevara to Guerrilla War when it crossed the Pacific. So, in Guerrilla War, your playable characters still resemble Guevara and Castro, but they are unnamed in this version. And instead of spelling out Cuba, Guerrilla War just indicates that it's all taking place on an unnamed Caribbean island. The arcade version released in 1987 and was ported to home consoles around the world in 1988, but the US had to wait for the game to be censored, scrubbed, and rinsed before seeing it hit their store shelves in summer of '89. Could Guerrilla War retain its revolutionary premise without its named protagonist? Well, let's see what's up. Guerrilla War on the NES turns out to be quite faithful to the arcade original with almost the exact same stage layout. The major differences are in the obvious departments of graphics, color, and sound design. The sprites in the arcade version are bigger, and you get a health meter when inside the tank. Other than that, Guerrilla War on the NES is fairly spot on, and, as a bonus, you get infinite continues that start you exactly where you got a game over, as if you dropped another quarter right into your NES. This top-down run-and-gun came out after Ikari Warriors, but the resemblance to the game is unmistakable. You travel north along the screen, shooting enemies as they appear and dodging their onslaught of bullets. Along the way, you'll see tied-up hostages that you have to simply touch to rescue. They remind me a bit of Metal Slug hostages, just in the way they look like disheveled cavemen. Actually, they remind me of the guy who runs toward the camera at the beginning of Monty Python episodes. As you go around killing hundreds of enemy soldiers, you'll see red letters appear, and these are your various weapons and power-ups. The letters are not at all helpful in hinting toward what the pickup could possibly be. The manual is here to help and honestly makes the whole thing appear worse than I thought. Let's take a detour and clown on this for a second. In fact, we're going to change a few of these definitions to something that makes sense. So according to the manual, L is launches bullets, you know, like any gun. These L bullets are better than your default machine guns because they go further. Maybe it should mean long range. There, see, we fixed it. L is for long range. F is flamethrower, and that I can get down with. And the flamethrower rules, by the way. B is high power exploding grenade. There is no letter B in any of those words. I thought B was for like barrier, like maybe you can take an extra hit before dying. And what's funny is that I always thought that was true. I'm only now looking at the manual for this video. I had no idea it made my grenades more boomy. Oh, that's it. B stands for boomy. The manual says S is for three-way bullet. Oh, okay, you mean like a spread shot from Contra. There, fixed it for you. Spread shot. T is for explosive. Why is T for explosive? The T-gun is the best weapon in the game in my opinion. It launches a missile that splits into the spread shot on impact, wiping out even more enemies. So candidates for T here could be the gun, because what other gun do you need? Or maybe T can be for 2-in-1, huh? C is clearing bomb, and I'm okay with that. K wipes out every enemy on screen. K for kill, got it. N is bonus points. Just why? Why is N bonus points? And why do we need bonus points? You know what? N is for not necessary. Oh, and if you touch this picture of a train conductor, you get an extra guerrilla fighter. You can also come across tanks that you can hop in and mow enemies down with. It's awesome, but short-lived as the tank takes damage. The arcade version gives you a health meter for your tank, but here on the NES, if you see it start to flash and you hear a frantic beeping alarm, that's your cue to bail. Rescued hostages give you points, and again, points aren't really all that necessary or important, but shooting hostages subtracts points. You can also rescue people running for their lives on occasion, and you can do the opposite of rescue livestock for points. If you shoot a loose pig, the game thinks that's great. There are 10 total stages, but only like 3 different environments. You're either in the jungle, in a cave, or in the streets. The enemies are all the same, always. Maybe they'll have a different weapon like a rocket launcher or something at some point, but they're all one-hit kill enemies. The latter parts of the games get tough as many more enemies are thrown your way at once, which is where the game's performance suffers with slowdown and flicker. In fact, you'll experience flicker the whole game. The explosions look cool though. The music and sound design are definitely here. None of the tracks are memorable to me outside of the opening stage music and the jingle that plays when you get a game over. And if this were 2008, I would make that jingle my ringtone. Most stages end in a boss battle, typically with an imposing enemy like these giant dudes in a bulldozer that spews grenades. Sometimes you don't even kill them, they just get mad and fling you to the next area of the map. Sometimes the stages end in grueling onslaughts of enemy waves. There's even a fun bonus level where you are on a runaway minecart, and you have to lasso the hostages into the cart as you go. Easily my favorite stage as a kid, because you can't die in it. I mentioned Ikari Warriors earlier, and that game is notably difficult. What helps here in Guerrilla War are the aforementioned unlimited lives and continues and generous on-the-spot restarts. And because of that, Guerrilla War has the distinction of being the first game I ever beat as a kid. I had no idea it could be beaten. I would usually get tired and quit playing before the end, but my older brother encouraged me to keep going, and eventually I'd find the end and face the final boss. I probably used over 100 continues, but I was 6 and, well, games were so hard back then I just assumed they didn't end. They were just designed to make us all feel inadequate. Amusingly, as a kid I refused to believe that the game was pronounced Guerrilla War. The only gorillas I was aware of were of the primate variety. I got in a long argument with my older sister when I was 5 or 6 trying to explain to her that it must be Guerrilla War and not Gorilla, or else they would have spelled it differently. I can't believe she was actually right about something for once. In the end, Guerrilla War is a simple experience with loads of action. Anyone can pick up and play it and have fun, even if they're getting killed constantly, as SNK was very generous and chose not to punish the player. On that same token, if you're looking for a challenge, you'll have to impose your own continue restrictions on this one. It goes without saying, but having 2 players amps the experience up where the points can matter if you want them to, and you can compete over picking up the weapons on the ground and rescuing the hostages. Well, that's going to do it for this game on the NES. As always, T is for explosives and G is for a Guerrilla War. And thanks for watching.